Hey everyone, and welcome to a deep dive into how to learn English quickly.
Sounds exciting.
It is. We're breaking down this really cool article from Fluent U Language Learning.
Oh, yeah, I've seen that one.
It's called How to Learn English Quickly with 10 Tips.
Catchy title.
Right. It was published early this year, but they just updated it this month, so it's got the latest info.
Nice. So we're getting the freshest insights.
Exactly. And what's really cool is it's not just random tips and tricks.
Oh.
It's all about techniques that have solid scientific research behind them.
I like it. So we're not just guessing. We're going with what actually works.
For sure. So are you ready to dive in?
Let's do it.
Awesome. So tip number 1 is all about listening. And I mean a lot of listening.
Okay, I'm intrigued, but I think I'm already doing that.
Yeah, but we're not talking about hitting the textbooks and memorizing grammar rules.
Oh, okay. So what kind of listening are we talking about?
This is about what they call unconscious or implicit learning.
Unconscious learning.
Yeah, basically the idea is that you can soak up a language just by being exposed to it regularly.
Interesting, like how we learned our first language.
Exactly. You didn't sit there with flashcards as a baby, did you?
Definitely not.
So the idea is to surround yourself with English as much as possible. Podcasts, music, even just having the TV on in the background.
That's reassuring because I do a lot of that already.
And it can actually make a difference. What's wild is researchers have even proven this works with completely made up languages.
Really? Like how?
They created these fake languages for their studies, and people started picking up patterns and learning just by listening.
Wow, so our brains are constantly searching for patterns even if we don't realize it.
Totally. And it's way more powerful than we think. Okay, so we're basically giving our brains this passive English workout without even knowing it.
I love that passive English workout.
It's a sneaky way to learn,
Yeah.
right? Okay, so that's tip 1. Just soak up as much English as you can in any way you can.
Got it on to tip 2.
Tip 2 is about paying attention to sound patterns.
Sound patterns.
You know how sometimes you hear a word and it just sounds wrong, even if you don't know the exact spelling?
Yeah, like it just feels off.
Exactly. Languages have this kind of inherent logic to their sounds, even if they're totally different.
Right, like some sounds just naturally go together and others don't.
The article uses the example of the letters BL versus LB. We instinctively know that words can start with BL, like blink,
Right. Blink, block, blue makes sense.
but LB just feels wrong.
Totally. You never hear a word that starts with LB. It's like our ears know it's not right.
And that brings us to a really helpful tip. If you're ever unsure about the spelling of an English word, say it out loud.
Say it out loud. Okay.
If it sounds wrong to your ear, there's a good chance it's spelled wrong.
Interesting. So it's like your ear is a built-in spell checker.
I like that built-in spell checker. That's a great way to think about it.
So we've talked about general listening and sound patterns, but what about those tricky individual sounds that everyone struggles with?
Oh, you mean like L and R?
Yes, L and R, those are notorious for tripping people up.
Definitely. And that's where targeted sound training comes in. And it's amazing what happens in your brain when you focus on those sounds.
What do you mean?
Well, the article mentions a study that showed that learning a new language actually changes the physical structure of your brain.
Well, hold on. So my brain actually changes when I learn English.
Yeah, it's crazy, right? As you grapple with those new sounds and grammar, certain areas of your brain literally grow.
So the more I struggle, the more my brain grows.
It's kind of like that, but it gets even cooler. They found that different regions of the brain activate depending on the specific sound you're hearing.
So like different parts of my brain light up when I hear L versus R.
Exactly. They use those tricky L and R sounds. As an example, native English speakers showed activity in 2 distinct brain areas when they heard those sounds.
And what about people whose languages don't really distinguish between L and R?
They only showed activity in one area, so it's like their brains haven't learned to separate those sounds yet.
So what does that mean for someone trying to learn English?
It means that practicing those difficult sounds in isolation can actually help you rewire your brain to hear and pronounce them better.
Okay, that makes sense. Like I'm training my ears and my tongue to work together.
Exactly. You're giving your ears and your tongue a targeted workout.
I like that targeted workout, so I need to find some L and R workouts for my brain.
Right. And you know what else can help slowing down the audio?
Really just slowing it down.
Yeah, it sounds simple, but it allows your brain to really focus on those subtle differences between the sounds.
So like finding slowed down pronunciation videos on YouTube.
Exactly. That's a great way to start.
This is so cool. I'm already feeling inspired to step up my listening game. But what about vocabulary? I always struggle with memorizing new words.
Oh, I feel you. There's got to be a better way than just staring at flashcards, right?
Right. It feels so tedious and the words just don't stick.
Well, the article talks about the power of word associations for stronger memory. And I think this is something a lot of people already do naturally.
Word associations, like connecting words to images or actions.
Exactly. It's about making those connections in your brain to help you remember.
I think I do that sometimes. Like if I learn the word happy, I might picture someone smiling.
There's a reason for that. They actually did a study with sign language that showed signs that visually resemble their meaning were much easier to learn and remember.
Interesting. So it's like the brain likes it when things make sense visually.
Exactly. So instead of just trying to memorize the word eat from a flashcard, you could picture yourself taking a big bite of a delicious meal.
Or even draw a quick sketch of someone enjoying their food.
Exactly. By engaging multiple senses and making it fun, you're creating much stronger connections in your brain.
So it's not just about repetition, it's about making it meaningful.
And speaking of making those connections, let's
Yeah.
talk about moving away from rote memorization and focusing on patterns instead.
Patterns.
Yeah. I'll admit I've never been great at memorizing grammar rules. I'll just jumble up in my head.
I know what you mean. It's like trying to remember a bunch of random formulas.
But instead of memorizing those rules as abstract statements, try looking for patterns in how words change or are used. For example, think about the regular past tense in English, which ends in ed.
Okay, like walked, talked, learned.
Exactly. Instead of trying to memorize the rule itself, just observe how it's applying to different verbs.
So it's about seeing the pattern in action rather than just trying to remember the abstract rule.
Right. It's like cracking a code. You start to see the logic and consistency, which makes it so much easier to apply to new words.
I like that cracking the code. It makes grammar feel less intimidating.
And this idea of seeing words in context rather than isolation leads us to another important tip. Learn phrases, not just individual words.
Ah, that makes sense because
Yeah.
we don't speak in single words, we speak in chunks of meaning, right?
You got it, and a word can totally change its meaning depending on the words around it.
Give me an example.
Go think of the word retrospect. If you look it up in the dictionary, it means to look back on something, but you almost never hear it used without the in before it.
In retrospect. Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
The phrase in retrospect has a very specific nuance that the word retrospect on its own doesn't convey.
Right. It's about understanding how words work together to create meaning.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So instead of just trying to memorize retrospect, it's better to learn the whole phrase in retrospect.
Yeah.
It's more natural and helps avoid misunderstandings.
So it's like learning the vocabulary of phrases rather than just individual words.
I like that the vocabulary of phrases.
Mm.
Okay, so we've talked about passive listening sound patterns, word associations,
Mhm.
learning in phrases, any other powerful techniques we can explore.
What about music?
Ah, yes, music, the universal language.
Exactly. And it's not just about enjoying music. You can actually use it to learn English.
Right, remember those catchy songs we learned as kids? The alphabet song, Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star?
I can still sing those without even thinking about it.
And there's a reason those songs stick with us. Music is seriously powerful for language learning and not just for children.
So how does music help us learn?
Well, the article mentioned a study that found the way we learn music and the way we learn language are surprisingly similar.
Oh, interesting. Like how?
They both involve recognizing and reproducing patterns, whether it's a melody or a grammatical structure.
So listening to music in English can actually train my ear for the rhythm and intonation of the language, even if I don't understand all the words.
Exactly. You're picking up on those subtle cues without even realizing it.
And there's so many resources out there specifically designed for English learning through music, right?
Tons and tons of them. But you know what else works? Just putting on your favorite English language tunes and enjoying?
So I can just listen to my favorite bands and call it studying.
Well, kind of. It's learning disguised as fun.
I'm on board with that. Okay, so we've covered passive listening sound patterns, word associations, learning in phrases, and even using music. What other techniques can we explore?
Let's talk about a method that can feel both exciting and a little daunting: immersion.
Immersion. Okay, I've heard a lot about that, but what does it actually mean?
It's about surrounding yourself with English as much as possible, creating like a mini English-speaking world for yourself.
So maximizing my exposure to the language in any way I can.
Exactly. And here's the fascinating part. Immersion doesn't just help you learn. It can actually change how your brain processes language.
Wait, seriously? So like physically change the structure of my brain?
Yep. Studies have shown that immersions can lead to changes in brain activity, making it more similar to that of native speaker.
Wow, that's incredible.
And the article has some great suggestions for incorporating more immersion into your daily life.
Like what kind of suggestions?
Well, think about changing the language settings on your phone and social media to English,
Oh, that's a good idea. I haven't thought of that.
or joining online groups and communities where people speak English.
So I'm interacting with people in English even if I'm just typing.
And of course, watching TV shows and movies in English.
Yeah, that's a classic one, but it can be hard to stay focused.
Right. But there are tools that can help, like subtitles and even interactive transcripts.
Oh, cool. So I can read along as I watch.
It's all about finding creative ways to integrate English into your daily routine.
I'm getting so many ideas already.
This is great. But what about those of us who thrive on a bit more structure?
Right, immersion sounds amazing, but I also like having a plan to follow.
Well, the classroom method, as the article calls it, is all about structured learning.
You mean like taking formal English classes?
It doesn't have to be formal classes. It could be
Yeah.
anything from working with a tutor to following a textbook or using online learning resources.
So it's about having a more systematic approach.
Exactly. The key is having a structured approach to building your foundation in grammar, spelling, and vocabulary.
Okay, so it's not about choosing one method over the other.
Well, that leads us to the final point, which combines the best of both worlds, the dual method.
The dual method, I like the sound of that.
This approach is all about combining the benefits of both immersion and structured learning.
So I can have my cake and eat it too.
Exactly, and there's actually research to support this approach. The article mentions a study comparing bilingual classrooms, where instruction is given in two languages, with immersive classrooms, where it's all in English.
Okay, interesting. So which one was more effective?
Well, what they found was fascinating. The students in the immersive classrooms learned faster initially, but their progress slowed down over time.
Like they hit a plateau.
And the bilingual students, on the other hand, learned more slowly at first, but ultimately surpassed the immersive group.
Wow, so it's like the tortoise and the hare of language learning, slow and steady wins the race.
Exactly. And the dual method is especially effective for intermediate learners who are looking to combine structured progress with real-world application.
It's about finding that balance between hitting the books and just living the language.
I like that, living the language. That's a great way to put it.
So we've covered a lot of ground in this first part, from unconscious learning to sound patterns to immersion and structured learning.
And we've just scratched the surface. There's so much more to explore in the world of language learning.
I can't wait to see what else we uncover in the next part of our deep dive.
Me too. It's going to be fascinating. Stay tuned. All right, so last time we covered some seriously cool techniques for learning English quickly, from training our ears with music to rewiring our brains with targeted sound practice.
It's fascinating stuff, right?
Totally. But now get ready to step into the future because we're talking technology and language learning.
Ooh, yeah, this is where things get really interesting.
Right. We've got language learning apps, AI-powered tutors, online communities. It feels like the possibilities are endless.
It's a constantly evolving landscape, but before we get too caught up in all the shiny new tools, it's important to remember those fundamental principles we talked about last time.
Right, like focusing on patterns, practicing those tricky sounds, immersing ourselves in the language.
Exactly. Technology can enhance and amplify those methods, but it shouldn't replace them entirely.
So it's not about finding some magic app that'll make me fluent overnight. Unfortunately not, no.
Darn. I was hoping for a shortcut. There's no substitute for putting in the effort and engaging with the language consistently.
Okay, fair enough. But the right tools can definitely make that journey more efficient and maybe even more enjoyable, right?
Absolutely. That's what we're here to explore.
So what are some of the ways technology can really make a difference?
One area where technology really shines is in providing personalized feedback.
Personalized feedback.
Remember those grammar exercises we all used to do in textbooks?
Don't remind me the dreaded fill in the blanks.
Now, imagine an app that not only checks your answers, but also explains why they're right or wrong, and even suggests different ways to express the same idea.
Whoa, that's next level. It's like having a personal tutor in my pocket.
Exactly. And a lot of language learning apps offer that kind of personalized guidance, adapting to your strengths and weaknesses as you progress.
So it's like a learning experience tailored just for me.
You got it. And that kind of personalization can be incredibly motivating. It's like the app is saying, hey, I see you're struggling with this grammar point. Let's work on it together.
That's so much better than just getting a big red X next to my answer.
And speaking of encouragement, technology is also great at creating a sense of community, which can be a huge motivator.
Community.
Yeah.
I definitely feel more motivated when I'm connecting with other learners.
It's easy to feel isolated when you're struggling, but online forums, language exchange platforms, even social media groups, they can all provide spaces to practice, get feedback, share tips and resources.
It's like taking the classroom experience online, but with a global reach.
Exactly. And it can be incredibly inspiring to see other people going through the same challenges and celebrating their successes.
It's a good reminder that we're not alone on this journey.
Yeah.
And let's not forget about all the amazing English content that's available online.
Right. It's mind-blowing. We've got movies, TV shows, music, podcasts, articles. It's like an endless supply of English immersion right at our fingertips.
It can feel a bit overwhelming, though, like where do I even start?
That's a good point. But that's where technology can help us. Again, there are tools that can help us extract the most value from all that content.
Oh, really? Like what?
For example, have you ever heard of browser extensions that provide instant translations and definitions of words you don't know?
No way. So I could be watching a movie and instantly understand a word I'd never seen before.
Exactly. No more pausing the movie to scramble for a dictionary.
That's amazing. And I think some streaming platforms even offer interactive subtitles.
Yeah, you can click on a word to see its definition or hear it pronounced correctly.
So you're learning while you're being entertained. I love it.
Okay, ready for the next level?
Bring it on.
AI-powered language tutors.
AI tutors, now we're talking.
These virtual assistants can engage you in conversations, give feedback on your pronunciation, and even tailor lessons to your specific interests.
Wow, so it's like having a conversation partner who's available 24/7.
And one who never gets tired of correcting your grammar.
I'll take it. But with all these amazing tools out there, how do we choose the right ones?
That's a great question. It can definitely feel overwhelming.
Yeah, like where do we even begin?
It all comes down to your learning style, your goals, and your preferences. What works for one person might not work for another.
So it's not a one-size-fits-all approach.
Definitely not.
Huh.
Some people might prefer an app with lots of visuals, while others might learn better through audio.
And it's important to be clear about your goals, right? Like, am I aiming for conversational fluency or am I preparing for an exam?
Right, having a specific goal in mind will help you choose the tools that are most aligned with your needs.
And of course, there's the element of personal preference. Some people thrive in a structured environment, while others prefer a more flexible approach.
Exactly. It's like finding the perfect pair of shoes. You might have to try on a few before you find the ones that fit just right.
So the key is to experiment and find what works best for you.
Absolutely. Don't be afraid to try out different apps, websites, resources until you find the ones that click. But remember, technology is just a tool.
Right.
It's up to you to use it effectively.
So it's about being proactive and intentional in my learning journey.
Exactly. Technology can open up incredible possibilities, but it's our effort, our consistency, and our engagement with the language that ultimately determine our success.
I love that it's empowering to know that I have so much control over my own learning.
And that's really the beauty of language learning in the digital age. We have access to more resources than ever before, but it's up to us to harness those resources and make the most of them.
Well said. Okay, so we've explored the science of language learning, and now we've seen how technology can supercharge our efforts. What's next on our deep dive?
We're going to delve into an area that's often overlooked but incredibly powerful, the world of mindset and motivation.
Ooh, mindset motivation.
I'm intrigued.
We'll explore how our attitudes and beliefs can impact our learning and discover practical strategies for staying motivated and overcoming those inevitable bumps in the road. I'm ready for the challenge. Let's do it. Welcome back to the final part of our deep dive. It's been an incredible journey so far. We've explored the science of how our brains learn languages and all the amazing ways technology can help us. But now it's time to turn the spotlight inward.
That's right. We're going to explore the world of mindset and motivation.
Because let's face it, learning a new language can be an emotional roller coaster.
It definitely can.
There are those amazing moments when everything clicks and you feel like you're making real progress.
Absolutely. But then there are those days when you hit a wall and you just want to give up.
So true. It's a journey with highs and lows for sure.
And it's how we navigate those challenging moments that really makes a difference.
So how do we cultivate that super learner mindset? What are the secrets?
Well, one of the most important things is changing how we view mistakes.
Mistakes. Oh yeah, that's a big one.
I think a lot of us, myself included, tend to get really discouraged when we make mistakes. It feels like a setback.
Totally. Like I'm doing something wrong.
But in language learning, mistakes are actually incredibly valuable.
Right, really.
Every time you make a mistake, it's a sign that your brain is actively trying to figure out the language.
I never thought of it that way.
It's a learning opportunity in disguise.
So instead of getting frustrated, I should be thinking, hey, my brain is working hard here. Thanks for the feedback, brain.
Exactly. Embrace those oops moments and use them to refine your understanding.
So it's all about reframing those mistakes as learning experiences.
Right, think of yourself as a scientist conducting experiments. Not every experiment is going to be a success, but each one provides valuable data.
I love that analogy.
Yeah.
It takes the pressure off.
Yeah.
Okay, so mistakes are good. What else can we do to cultivate that growth mindset?
Another crucial element is focusing on progress, not perfection.
Oh, this is a big one for me. I'm definitely a perfectionist, which can sometimes hold me back in language learning.
How so?
Well, I get so caught up in trying to get everything exactly right that I ended up feeling paralyzed.
I hear that a lot, and the truth is perfection in language learning is kind of a myth. There's always more to learn, more nuances to master. It's an ongoing journey.
So instead of beating myself up for not being perfect, I should focus on celebrating the small wins along the way.
Exactly. Acknowledge how far you've come since you started and appreciate the unique skills and perspectives you bring to the language.
It's about recognizing those little victories that keep us moving forward.
Right. It's like climbing a mountain. You may not reach the summit overnight, but each step takes you closer to your goal.
That's a great way to look at it.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've talked about mindset. What about motivation? Because learning a new language takes time and effort.
You're absolutely right. It's easy to lose steam if you don't have a clear purpose driving you.
So how do we stay motivated when things get tough?
Well, start by asking yourself, why are you learning English?
Why am I learning English?
Is it to travel the world, connect with loved ones, advance your career, pursue a passion?
Having that strong purpose in mind can make all the difference.
It's like having a compass that guides you towards your destination.
And speaking of destinations, another way to boost motivation is to set realistic and achievable goals.
That's so important. It's easy to get caught up in setting the bar too high and then feeling disappointed when we don't reach those goals right away.
Yeah, I've definitely been there.
So start with small, manageable steps and gradually increase the challenge as you progress.
It's like training for a marathon. You don't start by running 26 miles on day one.
Exactly. You build up your endurance, gradually celebrating each milestone along the way.
And finally, what about the power of positive self-talk?
Oh, that's huge. The way we talk to ourselves has a huge impact on our motivation and confidence.
I know I can be my own worst critic sometimes, especially when it comes to language learning.
It's easy to fall into that trap. But instead of saying things like, I'm terrible at English, try saying, I'm learning and improving every day.
It's like being my own cheerleader.
Exactly. You deserve your own support and encouragement.
This has been such an eye-opening deep dive. I feel like I've learned so much about the science, the strategies, and now the mindset of successful language learning.
Me too. It's been a fantastic journey.
And to all of you listening out there, we hope you've been inspired to take your English learning to the next level. Remember, there's no magic formula, but with the right approach, a positive attitude, and a willingness to embrace the process, you can achieve anything.
Absolutely. So keep exploring, keep practicing, and most importantly, never give up on your language learning dreams.
Well said. Until next time on The Deep Dive, keep those language fires burning bright.